7-year-old Ava sat nervously in her classroom, her long brown hair flowing over her shoulders. Her teacher, Ms. Parker, approached with a gentle smile. "How about a new look, Ava?" she suggested, holding a pair of scissors. Ava hesitated but trusted Ms. Parker. Snip, snip, snip. Locks of hair fell to the floor. Ava's eyes widened in surprise and confusion as her once long hair was now cut short. Ava looked on in horror as her long locks lay scattered across the classroom floor. "Isn't that better? Now, your hair won't get tangled in the paints, and your classmates won't pull it anymore. It's for the best," Ms. Parker declared. However, if it was for the best, why did Ava feel a deep sadness in the pit of her stomach? She loved her hair even though it sometimes got tangled, and the boys in her class pulled it. Something didn't feel right about Ms. Parker just cutting it. She didn't even warn her beforehand. Ava was in big trouble, and her father wasn't going to like this. As Ava left the classroom and walked home, she felt the breeze on her neck where her long hair used to be. She was unsure how her dad would react. He always said her hair was beautiful, just the way it was. As she walked, she kept touching her short hair, trying to get used to the new feeling. Ava felt a knot in her stomach, worrying about his reaction. She hoped he wouldn't be too upset. He often called her Rapunzel because of her long locks, but now most of her hair was gone. Ava panicked. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know how she was going to explain this to her father. He had spent years treating and maintaining her long locks. She wondered how her dad would react. At home, Ava's father, Dave, noticed the change immediately. His face turned from puzzled to furious. "Who did this to you?" he demanded. Ava stammered. "Ms. Parker, at school." Dave's anger intensified. How dare someone cut his daughter's hair without his permission? There would be hell to pay. He called the school immediately, demanding to speak with the principal, Mrs. Jenkins. "This is unacceptable," he shouted into the phone. Mrs. Jenkins tried to calm him down. "Mr. Thompson, please, let's discuss this in person tomorrow." Reluctantly, he agreed. That night, he reassured Ava that everything would be okay. But inside, he was fuming, planning his confrontation with the school staff. Dave Thompson was a single dad, having struggled to care for Ava after her mother left them years ago. He worked 2 jobs to provide a stable home and afford a good school for Ava. Balancing work and fatherhood was challenging, but he remained devoted to his daughter. He was determined to give her the best. Each day he woke up early, prepared Ava's meals, and ensured she had everything she needed, sacrificing his own comfort for her well-being. Ava often saw the exhaustion in her father's eyes. He would come home late from his second job, yet always made time to help her with homework or read her a bedtime story. Dave's dedication inspired Ava to work hard in school. She knew her father's sacrifices were for her future. Despite the hardships, their bond grew stronger, rooted in mutual love and determination to overcome life's challenges together. Weekends were precious to Dave and Ava. They spent Saturdays at the park or library, cherishing these moments away from the hustle of daily life. On Sundays, Dave prepared a special breakfast, enjoying their time together. Though often tired, he cherished these moments with Ava. He understood that these small acts of love and attention were crucial in building a strong, supportive relationship. Despite financial struggles, Dave always managed to save enough for occasional treats for Ava, like art supplies. He recognized her talent and passion for drawing and painting and encouraged her creativity. Watching her immerse herself in art brought him joy, knowing he was nurturing her dreams. Ava's artwork decorated their small apartment, a testament to their enduring love and resilience, even in the face of adversity. Dave made sure to attend every parent-teacher meeting, despite his hectic schedule. He wanted to be actively involved in Ava's education and show her teachers that he cared deeply about her progress. His presence at school events reassured Ava, making her feel valued and supported. Teachers admired his dedication, were aware of his demanding circumstances, and offered extra help whenever possible. Dave wanted to be the best dad to his previous daughter. After all, they only had each other. He wanted to be there for her every step of the way. Dave's co-workers often commented on his dedication to Ava. They admired how he balanced work and fatherhood, offering support and understanding whenever he needed flexibility. At times, his supervisor allowed him to adjust his schedule for important school events. The kindness of his colleagues eased some of his burdens, allowing him to focus on providing the best for Ava. Dave was grateful that he had the support of so many people. It was hard being a single parent, but he wanted to be the best that he could be for his daughter. One evening, after a long day, Dave found Ava waiting for him with a surprise. She had prepared a simple dinner, a gesture of appreciation for his hard work. "Dad, I made us some ham and cheese sandwiches with chips. I know it's simple, but I can't make anything on the stove yet. I hope you like it." Touched, he hugged her tightly, overwhelmed by her thoughtfulness. "It's perfect, princess. You know I love ham and cheese sarmies with chips." Moments like these reinforced his determination to continue working hard. Ava's love and gratitude were the fuel that kept him going through the toughest times. Holidays were bittersweet for Dave and Ava. Without her mother, the celebrations felt incomplete. However, they created their own traditions, finding joy in their small family rituals. Dave always ensured that Ava experienced the magic of holidays, decorating their home and cooking her favorite dishes. These moments, filled with love and laughter, strengthened their bond and created lasting memories. It didn't matter then if she had a mother or not. What mattered was that they had each other. If there was one thing that Dave took pride in, it was Ava's long hair. He had watched many YouTube tutorials on braiding and treatments. Thus, he became very protective of Ava's hair. Each morning, he carefully brushed and braided it, ensuring it looked neat and beautiful. Ava cherished these moments, feeling her father's love in every gentle stroke. Her hair began to grow very long, becoming a symbol of their resilience and bond. Dave's attention to her hair was a way of showing his unwavering support. As Ava's hair grew longer, it attracted admiration from classmates and teachers. They often complimented her on its length and shine. Ava took pride in her hair, knowing it was a result of her father's care. "My daddy helped me to grow my hair. He puts all kinds of hair products on it to keep it nice and shiny," Ava bragged to her friends. Dave learned new braiding techniques, enjoying the time they spent together each morning. These routines strengthened their connection, turning a daily task into a cherished ritual. At school events and community gatherings, Ava's long hair stood out, drawing compliments from many. Parents and teachers praised Dave for his dedication. "You must spend a lot of time on Ava's hair," they would say, impressed by its beauty. Dave would smile, appreciating the recognition of his efforts. For him, caring for Ava's hair was an expression of his love and commitment. However, not everyone was impressed with Ava's long hair. This would lead to something happening that would make Dave want to cause World War III at the school. Ms. Parker, Ava's teacher, began to notice that Ava's long hair became an inconvenience in the classroom. It often got tangled in paints during art projects, and other students would sometimes pull on it, causing disruptions. Despite Ava's attempts to keep it neat and braided, her hair seemed to always be in the way. Ms. Parker's frustration grew as she struggled to manage the classroom, with Ava's long hair becoming a constant distraction. During a painting activity, Ava's hair dipped into the paint, leaving colorful streaks on the paper and her hair. Ms. Parker sighed, feeling annoyed. "Ava, you need to be more careful," she said, her patience wearing thin. Ava apologized, trying to keep her hair out of the way. Ms. Parker couldn't help, but feel that Ava's hair was becoming a bigger problem than she had anticipated. Other students began to complain about Ava's hair getting in their space. "Ms. Parker, Ava's hair is touching my desk," one student said. Ms. Parker tried to address the situation, asking Ava to tie her hair back more securely. "Ava, please tie your hair up. We can't have it being so unruly and in everyone else's space." Despite their efforts, Ava's hair continued to be a source of disruption in the classroom, and Ms. Parker's annoyance grew with each passing day. One day during a group project, Ava's hair got caught in another student's project, causing a minor mess. Ms. Parker's frustration reached its peak. "Ava, this is becoming a serious issue," she said, her tone stern. "You need to keep your hair under control, or there are going to be some serious problems in this classroom." Ava felt embarrassed and tried her best to keep her hair out of the way. But it was clear that Ms. Parker was losing patience. Ms. Parker considered speaking to Ava's father about the issue. She knew he was dedicated to Ava's hair, but the disruptions were affecting the entire class. She decided to call him in for a meeting, hoping to find a solution. She hoped Mr. Thompson would be willing to help her. Ms. Parker wanted to handle the situation delicately. Aware of the importance Ava and her father placed on her long hair, yet needing to address the practical issues in the classroom. During the meeting, Ms. Parker explained the challenges Ava's hair was causing. Dave listened attentively, understanding the teacher's perspective. "I see your point, Ms. Parker," he said. "We'll find a way to manage her hair better during school hours. Don't worry. Come Monday morning, her hair won't be a problem any longer." Ms. Parker appreciated his understanding and hoped they could work together to resolve the issue without causing Ava any distress. However, the problem would not be solved.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
On Monday morning, Ava arrived at school with neatly braided hair. Ms. Parker was pleased to see that her father had taken the time to ensure that his daughter's hair was neat and in place. However, as the day commenced, Ava's hair began to unravel, and once again, her long locks were all over the place. Soon enough, the complaints and teasing began. "Ms. Parker, Ava's hair is causing problems again." At this point, Ms. Parker had had enough. Despite the initial success with new hairstyles, Ava's hair occasionally unraveled during school activities. One afternoon, while working on a science project, Ava's braid came loose and her long hair spread out across the table, knocking over materials. Ms. Parker's patience began to fray. She sighed, trying to ignore it, but the constant disruptions were making it difficult to maintain classroom order. She watched as the other students laughed and tugged at Ava's hair, causing another interruption during the lesson. Ms. Parker couldn't take it anymore. As the weeks went by, Ms. Parker found herself increasingly frustrated. Ava's hair seemed to have a mind of its own, unraveling at the most inconvenient times. During a math lesson, her hair got tangled in her pencils, causing a commotion. Ms. Parker felt her irritation rising. "Ava, please fix your hair," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. Ava quickly tried to re-braid it, but Ms. Parker's patience was wearing thin. During art class, Ava's hair once again dipped into the paints, creating a colorful mess. Ms. Parker clenched her jaw, struggling to keep her composure. She knew Ava was trying her best, but the disruptions were becoming too frequent. "Ava, you need to do something about your hair," Ms. Parker said firmly, her frustration evident. Ava nodded, feeling embarrassed and upset. It seemed like she didn't know how to manage her long locks anymore. The breaking point came during a group activity when Ava's hair got tangled with another student's project, causing a loud disruption. Ms. Parker's patience snapped. "That's enough, Ava," she said, unable to hide her exasperation. "We can't keep having these interruptions." The classroom fell silent, and Ava looked down, feeling a wave of shame. Ms. Parker knew she had to address this issue more decisively. Ava was on the verge of tears, her anxiety palpable in the tense classroom air. Mrs. Parker, her patience evidently worn thin, stood with a stern look that seemed to cut through the room's usual hum of activity. Ava's hair, a subject of contention for reasons she struggled to fully grasp, was once again at the center of the issue. "Ava, I really didn't want to have to do this, but my hand's been forced," Mrs. Parker stated, her voice devoid of the warmth Ava had once found comforting. As Ava sat in the tense silence that followed, she braced herself for the inevitable. Being called into the principal's office seemed like the least of her worries now. The thought of her dad being called in filled her with dread. He was a kind man, but firm about the importance of responsibility and consequences. Ava knew she hadn't caused the paint mishap, but explaining the situation seemed futile. "These disruptions have to stop," Mrs. Parker had said, her disappointment clear. Ava prepared herself for the worst, but she had no idea that the consequences would be more dire than she could have anticipated.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
As the reality of the situation began to dawn on Ava, her eyes widened, a silent plea for understanding reflected in her gaze. She begged Mrs. Parker, with a desperation that was heartbreaking to witness, to reconsider, to grant her one last chance to prove herself. To Ava's surprise, Mrs. Parker's expression softened, a hint of a smile breaking through her previously impassive facade. "Okay, but one more mishap, say goodbye to your hair," she warned, her tone suggesting that this was indeed Ava's final reprieve. Determined not to find herself in a similar predicament again, Ava became extra vigilant about her hair. She made sure to keep it securely tied away from potential hazards, especially the paints that seemed to be a magnet for trouble. It was during this period of heightened caution that a classmate, having heard about Ava's ongoing struggles, approached her with a kind-hearted offer. "My mommy gives me hair ties to keep my hair tidy. I know you like your hair down and pretty, but this will keep you out of trouble," the girl said, handing Ava a black hair tie with a comforting smile. It was a simple yet thoughtful gesture that Ava appreciated deeply, recognizing it as the key to staying out of trouble. Unfortunately, despite Ava's best efforts and the newfound security the hair tie provided, fate had other plans. It wasn't long before another incident loomed on the horizon, one that would once again put Ava's resolve and her hair to the test. This time, however, the impending trouble wasn't a result of Ava's actions or decisions. It was an unforeseen accident that would challenge the fragile truce she had managed to establish with Mrs. Parker and potentially cost her more than she was prepared to lose. Ava clutched the black hair tie tightly, a symbol of hope amidst her growing fears. She had been careful, oh so careful, ensuring her hair remained a beacon of compliance rather than rebellion. The hair tie, a gift from a considerate classmate, had become her talisman against the seemingly inevitable. Days passed without incident, and Ava started to believe she might just navigate through the storm unscathed. Mrs. Parker, her gaze ever watchful, seemed to soften around the edges, perhaps convinced by Ava's efforts to conform. However, fate, it seemed, had a different plan. It was during an art class, a time when creativity should have flown freely, that disaster struck. Ava, her hair securely tied back, was deeply engrossed in her painting, a vibrant cascade of colors that mirrored her inner turmoil and hope. The class was bustling, the air thick with the scent of paint and the sound of laughter and chatter. Everything seemed completely normal. That was until Mrs. Parker's phone buzzed. She picked it up, and her face went pale at the sight. "Keep painting, children. I'll only be gone for a few minutes," she said as she dashed outside. The teacher stood by the door and took the important phone call. But that was enough for her to be distracted. She would completely miss what would happen next. In that moment of pure focus, Ava didn't notice the boy moving too quickly behind her, his arm flailing, his grip on a large brush loaded with bright red paint loosening. Time slowed as the brush made its way toward Ava, a streak of red arcing through the air with a trajectory aimed straight at her. No one could stop it from happening. The paint splattered, not on her canvas, but across her hair, the vibrant red stark against her dark locks, tied back though they were. The class fell silent, all eyes on Ava, as the realization of what had happened sunk in. Tears welled up in her eyes, not for the ruined hair, but for the unfairness of it all. Mrs. Parker, upon hearing the commotion, rushed over, her eyes widening at the sight. Ava's heart sank as she prepared herself for the worst. It wasn't my fault," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper, bracing for the inevitable. Unfortunately for Ava, all Mrs. Parker saw was the crimson paint splattered across her hair. They had made an agreement, and now, in the teacher's eyes, it was broken. "I told you that this was your last chance, Ava," Mrs. Parker said, her voice laced with frustration as she rubbed her brow. "These disruptions, they have to stop." "But I didn't do anything wrong," Ava insisted, though her voice was so faint it barely rose above a whisper. Despite her plea, it seemed she was destined to take the blame for this incident, and it would have dire consequences for her hair. The room felt oppressively silent as Mrs. Parker deliberated. Ava's classmates watched, some with sympathy, others with the detached interest children often show in the face of another's misfortune. Ava felt tears stinging her eyes, threatening to spill over. Her beautiful hair, which she had managed to keep safe from harm all week, was now the center of a debacle she had no part in creating. Mrs. Parker sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "Ava, I understand that accidents happen, but this is exactly what we were trying to avoid." Her eyes scanned the room, perhaps seeking an ally or further proof of Ava's guilt. It looked as if she wasn't sure what to do. In Ava's mind, she was going to get into big trouble with the principal. But she had no idea how radical the teacher's thinking was. "I'm sorry, but we had an agreement. Your hair has to be cut. It's the only way to ensure this doesn't happen again." Mrs. Parker's demeanor changed in an instant. The sweet teacher that Ava knew was gone. worn down by the frustration of the little girl's hair. The teacher started pacing around the room, deciding what she would do with Ava for what had happened. But what she did next would change everything. Ava wanted to argue, to scream that it wasn't fair, that the incident wasn't her fault, but the lump in her throat made it impossible to speak. She backed away from the teacher. She had a bad feeling about what was going to happen next. The thought of losing her hair, a part of her identity, was too much to bear. The teacher's patience was completely gone, and she wouldn't wait around for the principal or anyone else to weigh in. She would take action herself. Ms. Parker decided she could no longer tolerate the disruptions caused by Ava's hair. Frustrated and desperate, she made a drastic decision. One afternoon, after yet another incident, she called Ava aside. "Ava, your hair is causing too many problems," she said sternly. Without waiting for Ava's response, Ms. Parker grabbed a pair of scissors from her desk, her mind made up. Ava's eyes widened in fear and confusion. Ms. Parker's impatience overrode her judgment. "Hold still," she instructed, reaching for Ava's braid. Ava tried to protest, but Ms. Parker had already begun cutting. Thick locks of Ava's hair fell to the floor, leaving Ava stunned and tearful. The classroom fell silent as students watched in shock. Ava felt a mixture of humiliation and betrayal. She couldn't believe her teacher had cut her hair without asking. When the final snip echoed in the silent classroom, Ms. Parker stepped back, satisfied with her work. "There," she said, attempting a reassuring smile. "This should solve the problem." Ava stared at her reflection in disbelief, tears streaming down her cheeks. The other students were too shocked to speak. Ms. Parker realized too late the gravity of her actions. Ava felt an overwhelming sense of loss and violation. Ava ran home after school, her heart pounding with a mixture of shock and grief. She burst through the door, sobbing uncontrollably. Dave rushed to her side, horrified to see her hair chopped unevenly. "What happened, Ava? Who did this?" he asked, his voice trembling with anger. Through her tears, Ava explained what Ms. Parker had done. Dave felt a surge of protectiveness and fury. He was not going to let Ms. Parker and the school get away with what she had done to his daughter's hair. Dave stormed into the school the next morning, demanding to see Ms. Parker. His usually calm demeanor was replaced by barely contained rage. "How could you do this to my daughter?" he shouted. Ms. Parker tried to defend her actions, but Dave promptly cut her off. "You had no right," he fumed. The principal, hearing the commotion, intervened, promising to address the situation immediately. Ms. Parker, trying to keep her composure, explained, "Ava's hair was a distraction in class. I had to do something to maintain order and ensure a productive learning environment. It wasn't an easy decision." Her words only fueled Dave's anger. "A distraction? Cutting my daughter's hair without my permission is unacceptable," he roared. Ms. Parker looked to the principal for support, but the damage was already done. Dave wasn't going to let this go. Mrs. Jenkins, the principal, tried to mediate the escalating situation. "Mr. Thompson, I understand your frustration. Let's discuss this calmly and find a resolution." Dave, still fuming, reluctantly agreed to a formal meeting. Ms. Parker reiterated her stance, believing she had acted in the best interest of the class. However, Dave remained unconvinced. "My daughter's autonomy was violated. There must be consequences for this." Word of the incident spread quickly among the parents. Many were outraged that a teacher would take such drastic measures without parental consent. At the next PTA meeting, the room buzzed with heated discussions. "How can we trust teachers with our children if they make such personal decisions?" one parent exclaimed. Mrs. Jenkins faced a barrage of complaints, promising to review the school's policies and ensure such actions were never repeated. Dave found unexpected allies in the other parents, who rallied around him and Ava. They demanded accountability and change within the school administration. Petitions were signed, and meetings were held to voice their concerns. "This isn't just about Ava's hair, it's about respect and boundaries," a parent emphasized. The collective outrage sent a clear message to the school. The community would not tolerate such overreach. Under mounting pressure, the school board convened a special meeting to address the incident. Mrs. Jenkins publicly apologized to Dave and Ava, acknowledging the mistake. Ms. Parker was given a formal reprimand and required to attend sensitivity training. "We deeply regret the distress caused to Ava and her family," Mrs. Jenkins stated solemnly. Despite the apology, Dave remained wary, determined to ensure such a breach of trust never happened again. The story of Ava's haircut quickly spread on social media. Dave shared his outrage in a heartfelt post, detailing the incident and expressing his feelings of betrayal. Parents and community members flooded the post with supportive comments, sharing their own experiences and concerns about the school's actions. The post went viral, attracting attention from local news outlets and amplifying the community's demand for accountability. As the story gained traction, many parents began to reconsider their trust in the school. "If this can happen to Ava, what's stopping it from happening to our kids?" a parent posted online. Discussions about withdrawing children from the school erupted on social media and in parent meetings. "We need to find a place where our children are respected," another parent said, voicing a sentiment shared by many. The school faced an unprecedented crisis as enrollment numbers began to drop. Parents transferred their children to other schools, seeking environments they felt would better respect their kids' autonomy and well-being. Mrs. Jenkins held emergency meetings to address the situation, but the damage was significant. "We have to rebuild trust," she told her staff. "Our priority now is to show parents and students that we genuinely care and respect their individual needs." In response to the crisis, the school administration, teachers, and concerned parents formed a committee to address the issues raised by the incident. They organized workshops on consent, respect, and communication for both staff and students. "Change won't happen overnight," Dave noted in a meeting, "but we need to ensure that no child ever experiences what Ava did." Ava's story became a catalyst for change within the school and the broader community. Parents, teachers, and students collaborated to create a more inclusive and respectful environment. Ava, now an advocate for students' rights, spoke at school assemblies, sharing her experience and promoting awareness. The community's united efforts marked the beginning of a new era where every child felt valued and respected. Under pressure from the community, the school board enacted new policies to prevent similar incidents. These included mandatory training on student rights and clear guidelines on personal boundaries for all staff. Parent-teacher communication was also emphasized, ensuring that parents were always informed about decisions affecting their children. The changes were widely publicized, showing the community that the school was committed to rebuilding trust and ensuring the safety and respect of all students. Dave continued to be a vocal advocate for student rights. He joined the newly formed Parent-Teacher Committee, working tirelessly to ensure the policies were effectively implemented. His dedication was recognized by many, and he became a respected figure within the community. "It's about protecting our kids and their future," he often said, driven by his love for Ava and a desire to make a difference. Parents listened intently as Dave spoke about protecting children's rights when it came to schools. He hoped that it could make a difference. As the months passed, Ava regained her confidence. Her hair grew back, but more importantly, she felt empowered by the support she received. She became more outspoken in class, participating actively, and encouraging her peers to stand up for themselves. Ava's journey inspired other students to embrace their individuality and voice their concerns, fostering a more supportive and inclusive school environment. The ordeal had transformed her, making her stronger and more resilient.